We thought it was an animal until it stood up. It started with a dumb bet. Me, Dan, and Chelsea, three morons from Seattle, decided we were going to do real camping. Not KOA with showers and hookups. No cell signal. No ranger stations. Just deep in the North Cascades, miles past where the All Trails maps get vague. We found this spot called Goat Flats. Supposed to be quiet. High up with crazy views. You hike in about 7 miles. Real steep in places. But you get this wide open alpine meadow. Wildflowers, rocks, snow patches even in August. Hardly anyone camps there overnight. Exactly what we wanted. We loaded up at REI, cheap Coleman tent, Yeti cooler, some mountain house freeze-dried meals, because we didn't know what the fuck we were doing. Brought bear spray, of course. Headlamps, the basics. When we got there, the first thing that felt off wasn't anything spooky. It was just too quiet. I know. The middle of nowhere is supposed to be quiet, but this was like muted. No bugs, no birds, not even wind through the trees, just the crunch of our boots and our breathing echoing too loud in our ears. Dan joked that it was probably because of a bear, and Chelsea punched his arm, but when she looked back at me, I could tell she was unsettled too. Anyway, we made camp by this big boulder near the tree line. The sun dipped fast. The sky bled orange. Our little tent looked stupid in that huge, empty meadow. That's when we saw the first person. He was about, 300 yards away, just inside the trees, standing perfectly still. You know how sometimes your brain doesn't process people right in nature? Like your eyes expect trees and rocks, so it glitches for a second when it sees a human silhouette. That's what happened. Chelsea saw him first. Hey, is that a person? I squinted. At first, I thought it was a stump. But no. There was this tall, skinny figure, half in shadow, half in gold light, facing us, just watching. Dan waved like an idiot. Hey, you camping out here too? No response. The figure didn't even shift. We waited. Awkward. I felt my palms get clammy on the bear spray canister clipped to my pack. Eventually, Chelsea muttered, "Let's just finish setting up." We kept glancing back, but after 10 minutes the guy was gone, just vanished into the tree line. No sound, no crunch of boots, nothing. That night it got cold fast. We had a little fire going, cooked some instant ramen, tried to laugh it off. Dan was scrolling through old photos on his phone. No signal, of course. Chelsea said she felt like we were being watched. I told her, yeah, by the guy you saw earlier. But I'll admit it. I was spooked too. Because when I got up to take a piss, I noticed something that made my stomach drop. Boot prints, fresh, leading from the tree line toward our camp. But here's the thing. They stopped. About 20 feet from our tent. Like whoever it was had just stood there, watching, not moving closer, not turning away, just standing. I didn't tell Dan and Chelsea right away. What was I supposed to say? Hey guys, no big deal, but someone's creeping around out here barefoot. Because that's what it looked like. No tread pattern, just smooth-soled imprints, like someone walking around in socks. Or maybe moccasins. Either way, it wasn't a hiker. Later, when we zipped into the tent, we tried to laugh it off. You know, classic camping jitters. But I couldn't sleep. Every time the wind stirred the fabric, I jumped. At around 2:30 a.m., I heard crunching, soft, deliberate. Someone circling our tent. I froze. My hand wrapped around the bear spray. Chelsea's breath was shaking. Dan's too. None of us spoke. None of us moved. It circled twice, and then it stopped. Right behind my head. The fabric of the tent was thin. I could hear breathing. Ragged. Shallow. And then, God, I swear this happened. Fingers pressed against the nylon. Right where my face was. Slow. Deliberate. Tracing the curve of my cheek from the outside. I couldn't even scream. The hand stayed there for maybe 10 seconds. Then, it was gone. No footsteps retreating. No sound of brush moving. Just gone. In the morning, we found a long, thin slit cut into the back of the tent, right where my face had been. Perfectly straight, as if someone had dragged a knife across it. We packed up in silence, but we weren't alone. At the tree line, about 300 yards away, the figure was there again. Only this time, it was closer, and it wasn't alone. We didn't talk much while packing up. Every zipper sounded too loud. Every time a pot clinked against the stove, we flinched. No one made eye contact. Like if we didn't say it out loud, maybe it hadn't really happened. But the second we stood up to leave, Dan stopped dead. "Guys," he said, voice cracked. He didn't need to finish. At the edge of the trees, closer now, maybe 200 yards this time, there was the figure again. Same shape, same dead stillness. But next to him, offset by a few feet, was another one. Shorter, wider. Neither of them moved. They didn't wave, didn't shout, didn't do anything human. They just stood there, like mannequins posed in the woods. Chelsea grabbed my arm so hard her nails dug into my skin. "Why aren't they saying anything?" she whispered. I didn't have an answer. Dan, to his credit, tried to laugh. "Probably just some weirdos camping too close. Let's get moving." But as we shouldered our packs and started back down the trail, I couldn't shake the feeling of being herded. Like we weren't just leaving. We were being allowed to leave. You ever get that feeling? Like you're only safe because something decided you're not worth it yet? We kept a good pace at first. Silent. Focused. The morning sun was filtering through the pines, but it didn't feel warm. It felt clinical. Like stage lighting. Fake. After about half a mile, Chelsea muttered, "Guys, stop." I thought she had to pee or something, but then she pointed to the side of the trail. Footprints. But these weren't old. The pine needles were still springing back up where they'd been crushed. And they weren't going across the trail. They were parallel. Like someone had been shadowing us. Matching our pace. "Fuck this," Dan hissed. "We're not stopping." We picked up speed, but the faster we went, the more mistakes we made. I slipped on some loose gravel and scraped my palm raw. Chelsea nearly rolled her ankle. Dan was breathing too loud, turning his head like he expected something to jump out. And then we heard the whistle. High-pitched. Off-key. Just 3 notes. Rising, falling, rising. It wasn't close, not yet. But it was there. Somewhere off to our left, threading through the trees. We stopped. Then, from the right, maybe 100 yards away, came the answer. Same whistle. 3 notes. Same shitty melody. That's when it hit me. They weren't just following us. They were tracking us, pincering in. Chelsea whispered, "What do we do?" Dan was already pulling his knife out of his pack. "We keep moving. Don't stop. Don't look back." But it's human nature, isn't it? When someone tells you not to look back, you look back. So I did. And I wish to God I hadn't. On a ridge, maybe 50 yards uphill, there was a man crouched low, not standing, not walking, crouched, like an animal. One hand on the ground for balance, head tilted at a sick, unnatural angle, watching us. And when he saw me see him, he grinned. Not a big, toothy movie grin, just this small, tight stretch of lips, like he was savoring something. Dan grabbed my shoulder and yanked. "Don't look back." We started half jogging. The trail wasn't friendly. Roots grabbed at our boots. The drop-off on the left was steep. No guardrails. One misstep and you'd tumble 100 feet. And the whistles kept coming. From the left. From the right. Closer now. That stupid, broken little tune. Over and over. At one point we heard something moving fast through the brush. Snapping twigs. Heavy footfalls. Dan spun, holding the knife out. But nothing came. They weren't trying to catch us. Not yet. They were playing with us. Chelsea was crying by then. Not sobbing. Just silent tears streaking her face. I felt helpless. Like we were rats in a maze. And then we hit the clearing. There was an old, rotted-out log across the trail. We'd climbed over it on the way in without thinking. But now, as we approached, I saw something that made my stomach flip. Hanging from a low branch above the log was a strip of fabric. Torn red. Chelsea's bandana. She'd tied it to her pack strap that morning. I remembered watching her do it. Now it was here. Hung up like a flag. Dan lost it. "Fuck this. We're getting out. Now!" We scrambled over the log, but I paused, because next to where Chelsea's bandana hung was a knife, stabbed into the wood at eye level. Not a hunting knife, a kitchen knife. Wooden handle, dull silver blade, and written on the flat of the blade in what looked like marker was one word: stop. We didn't. We ran. Our packs slammed against our backs. Our breath came in ragged gasps. The whistles followed us, mocking. Sometimes too close, sometimes distant, like they knew exactly how to pace their terror. I don't remember how long we ran, but at some point the trail widened, and we saw the gravel turnout where Dan's Subaru was parked. It felt unreal, like it shouldn't still be there, but it was. We piled in, barely getting the doors closed before Dan peeled out. None of us spoke until we hit pavement, and even then, the only thing Chelsea said was, they were never going to let us leave. I asked her what she meant. She just looked out the window and whispered, "They wanted us to think we got away. We should have gone straight home." But instead we stopped in Darrington. Little logging town, population no one gives a shit. There's this diner there, Bluebird Cafe. We sat in a booth by the window, silent, shaking. Like three people who'd seen a ghost, except ghosts aren't real. But people are. Real enough to cut your tent open while you're sleeping. Chelsea's hands were still trembling so bad she could barely hold her coffee. Dan was the only one pretending to be okay. scrolling through his phone even though we'd barely gotten signal back. He just kept swiping, over and over, like he could scroll away what happened. I couldn't stop thinking about that knife. Stop. That wasn't some random psycho message. That was personal. It was directed at us. Like they'd been watching, waiting, and now they were pissed we didn't follow their little unspoken rules. "You guys realize," I said finally, "they knew where we were camping, where we were going. They left that shit on purpose." Chelsea didn't look up, just muttered, "They had her bandana. That means they got that close to me." Dan slammed his phone down, hard enough the sugar packets jumped. "Okay, listen, bunch of crazy meth head tweakers. They live off grid. We strayed into their territory. They decided to scare us off. Classic hillbilly horror movie shit. We're fine now." But his hands were balled into fists. Because deep down, we all knew it wasn't that simple. This wasn't random. This wasn't kids messing around. This was deliberate, organized. Someone had planned that little welcome party for us. Dan went to the counter to pay. Me and Chelsea stayed in the booth, not saying much. That's when an old guy sitting 2 tables down spoke up. "You kids were up by Goat Flats, weren't you?" I turned slowly. He was staring right at me. Weathered face, old REI fleece, probably in his 70s, but his eyes were sharp, too sharp. "Yeah," I said. "Why?" He nodded, like he'd already known the answer. "You'll see 'em then." Chelsea's voice was barely a whisper. "See who?" He tapped his temple. "The Watchers. Always up there. Used to be loners. Hermits, you know? But now it's different." Dan came back just in time to hear this. "Okay, old-timer. Thanks for the ghost story. But we're good." But the man didn't laugh. He leaned in slightly, lowered his voice. "They don't like folks staying overnight. You hike through, you're fine. You sleep there, you're trespassing. And they don't forget." That word hit hard. Forget. Chelsea was pale. "So what do we do? File a report, call the sheriff?" The man gave a slow, sad smile. "Sheriff knows. Everybody knows. But those folks live out there. No addresses, no names, they move. And they ain't breaking laws unless you count being strangers illegal." Dan shook his head. "You're telling me no one's done anything about them?" "People stay away, simple as that. You're alive, be grateful, leave it alone." But we couldn't leave it alone. Because on the drive back to Seattle, something happened that made my skin crawl worse than anything up there. I was in the back seat, trying not to close my eyes. Every time I blinked, I saw that crouching man again, that sick grin. I needed to stay awake. That's when my phone vibrated. No service, but a notification popped up. Airdrop request. I frowned. We hadn't been near anyone. No cars had passed us for miles. But the airdrop was there, plain as day. Sender, unknown device. File, IMG0429JPG. My mouth went dry. "Guys," I said, holding up my phone. Dan glanced in the rear view. "What?" "There's an airdrop coming in." Chelsea turned, confused. "From who?" "There's no one out here." "Exactly. I shouldn't have opened it. But curiosity, or maybe stupidity, won. The image loaded. It was a photo of me, sleeping, inside my tent, taken from inside the tent. The angle was low, like whoever took it was lying down, half inside the slit they'd cut. The camera flash was off, but you could see my face lit up by the glow of my own headlamp, hung from the tent ceiling. I felt my stomach twist. This wasn't from last night. My sleeping bag was half zipped. My shoes were still on. This was earlier. Before I knew they'd even been that close, someone had been inside our tent. Chelsea started crying again. Dan was cursing under his breath. Fuck, 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 how'd they get your phone? They didn't, I said. It's not on my phone. They're sending it now. They're near us. Dan's knuckles turned white on the steering wheel. We stopped at the first gas station we saw, middle of nowhere. Dan insisted on checking the car, making sure no one was hiding in the back or messing with the undercarriage. But we found nothing. Still, the damage was done. Someone had gotten close enough to take that picture, close enough to send it. Chelsea wanted to call the police right then and there, but Dan said something I'll never forget. What are we going to tell them? That a bunch of creeps followed us, took a picture, and airdropped it? There's no proof. They're not dumb enough to leave fingerprints. They're not dumb at all. And that's when it hit me. That's what made it worse. These weren't inbred hillbilly horror tropes. These were smart people, organized, patient, willing to wait days, weeks, even years, because it wasn't about chasing us. It was about being inside our heads, being part of our lives now, unseen, watching. We made it back to Seattle, safe, for now. But when I opened my backpack to unpack that night, I found something that froze me cold. A small folded piece of paper, tucked into my bag. I didn't put it there. None of us did. Written in thin, shaky handwriting, barely legible, was a single sentence. We see you clearer now. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. I sat on the floor of my apartment, back against the door like an idiot, bear spray in my yeet. Every shadow outside the window looked wrong. Every passing car made my heart jackhammer. But nothing happened. Not that night, or the next. And that was the worst part, because it let my brain spiral. What if they were already inside? What if they were watching me right now? What if this was part of their sick little game? I thought about that photo, the angle, the way they'd gotten that close, unnoticed, the way the paper had ended up in my bag. It wasn't a threat, not really. It was a statement. We see you clearer now. I kept thinking about the old guy at the diner, how he said they don't forget, how people leave it alone. But we'd poked the hornet's nest, and now they weren't just watching from the woods. They were watching us. I didn't hear from Dan or Chelsea for a couple days. We were all probably trying to pretend it was over, that maybe it had just been a backwoods scare. But then Chelsea texted me, "Please tell me you didn't leave anything at my place." I called her immediately. Her voice was shaking. I came home from work and there was a box on my kitchen table. I asked if it was from Amazon or something. "No," she said. "It wasn't mailed. No address, no note. Just sitting there, like it appeared in my apartment." I asked her what was in it. She didn't answer at first. When she did, it was barely a whisper. My shoes. The ones I left outside the tent that night. But they're not dirty. They're clean. Like washed. My stomach dropped. Those shoes had been caked in mud. No way someone cleaned them for her. No way they could have gotten into her locked apartment, unless they had followed her back. Dan came over to my place that night. He looked like hell. Bloodshot eyes, stubble, twitchy as fuck. "You too?" I asked. He nodded, tossed something onto my coffee table, a Polaroid of his apartment door taken from the hallway. The photo was fresh. You could still smell the chemical stink. "They're not done," he said, sinking into the couch. "They're not going to be done." We sat in silence for a long time. None of us was stupid enough to post anything online. This wasn't something you could throw on Reddit and get answers. These people weren't clout-chasing weirdos. They didn't want attention. They wanted intimacy. Dan had a theory, one that made me want to puke. What if this is a fucking game for them, like an initiation? They pick hikers, people who wander too far, then they, I don't know, induct you into whatever the fuck they are, slowly, not with violence, with proximity. I asked him what he meant by that. "Think about it," he said. "They didn't hurt us, not yet. But they got inside our tent. They followed us back to civilization. They left tokens, pictures, gifts. It's not about killing. It's about erasing boundaries. They want to be inside your life." I hated how much sense it made. It wasn't about the woods. It wasn't about goat flats. It was about us. We didn't sleep much that night. And at 3:17 a.m., my phone vibrated. Another airdrop request. Sender. Unknown device file, IMG0442, move, a video this time. I didn't want to open it. But of course I did. It was shaky, handheld footage, low to the ground, moving through an apartment. My apartment. I recognized the hallway, the coat rack, the shitty IKEA lamp. Whoever was filming was crouched low, panning slowly, deliberately. They stopped at my bedroom door. My door was open. In the video, I was asleep in my bed. The camera zoomed in. You could see my chest rising and falling. It got closer, closer, until the screen was filled with just my face, soft and slack with sleep. And then the camera tilted slightly, and I saw it. A reflection, in the mirror above my dresser. A figure, tall, thin, wearing what looked like a camouflage jacket. Maskless, just a human face, smiling. But the eyes were wrong, too wide, too aware. The video cut off. I was already up, turning on every light in my place, checking every door, every lock. Dan was right behind me. No signs of forced entry. But we knew better. They didn't force anything. That was the point. We thought we were safe because of locks, because of walls. But those were just illusions. Thin nylon, plaster, drywall, nothing more. I didn't even notice the smell until hours later. This faint, bitter chemical odor clinging to the window frame. Like someone had been standing there for hours, watching, breathing. Right then and there, Dan and I agreed on one thing. We couldn't stay in Seattle, not until we figured this out. Chelsea was already packing when we called her. "We're not running," Dan insisted. "We're regrouping, off-grid, somewhere they can't track us. But even as he said it, we knew it didn't matter where we went, because they'd already crossed that line, and they wanted us to know there's no such thing as out of bounds anymore. We didn't tell anyone, not the cops, not friends, not family. It wasn't even a choice anymore, because deep down we knew this was bigger than just telling. You don't call the police when the problem is in the air you breathe, when it's in you. Dan said it best. This isn't about the woods anymore. They chose us. So we left. Dan had a buddy, ex-army, lives in a cabin near Lake Caches. No signal, no neighbours. The kind of place you go when you don't want to be found. We figured if we couldn't stop them, maybe we could at least see them coming. Chelsea was jumpy the whole ride, kept checking her rear view, twitching at every car that passed. She even asked me to airplane mode our phones, like maybe we'd been tracked through Bluetooth or GPS, or God knows what. But you could feel it. This wasn't about tech. It was about presence. The cabin was small, 2 bedrooms, no cameras, no smart anything. Dan's buddy left us a shotgun, some solar lanterns, and a whole lot of good luck. That first night, it was quiet. Too quiet. You know how people talk about sleeping better in nature? Yeah. Bullshit. We took shifts. One person watching the windows, the other 2 pretending to sleep. Nothing happened. Not at first. But it was too calm. Like a held breath. Then, around 4 o'clock a.m., Chelsea woke me up. "There's something outside," she whispered. Not someone. Something. Dan was already up, shotgun resting on his lap. We turned off the lanterns, peered through the slats of the blinds. At first I thought my eyes were playing tricks, but no. There was movement. Low to the ground, slow, deliberate. Something crawling. No, someone. On all 4s. But the way they moved, smooth, almost boneless, it didn't look right. Dan's finger tensed on the trigger, but he didn't shoot, because more of them appeared, creeping from the tree line. 4, 5, 6 figures, all crawling, in sync. No sound but the faint scrabble of hands and feet on the gravel driveway. Then they stopped, right at the edge of the clearing, still, watching. The moon was bright enough to see their heads tilt in perfect unison, not towards the house, towards me. I don't know how I knew it, but I felt it, like being caught in a sniper's scope. You don't see it, you feel it. Dan whispered, "Do we run?" Chelsea shook her head violently. "Where?" "They're corralling us." We waited, frozen. And then they did something that made my teeth ache. They started knocking. Not on the house. On the ground. Knock, 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 knock. A pattern. I couldn't tell you what it meant, but it was for us. Then one of them stood up. You ever watch a spider unfold itself? It wasn't fast, it wasn't sudden. It was wrong. This figure, tall, rail thin, stood up, dusted off its knees and took a single step toward the house. Dan raised the shotgun. "One more step," he muttered. The figure stopped, tilted its head, and smiled. Not a grin, just a polite suburban smile, like a neighbor offering you pie. Then, in a slow, deliberate motion, it raised its hand and tapped 2 fingers against its throat, like it was reminding me, "We see you clearer now." Then they all did it. Every one of them. That same 2-finger tap to the throat. Dan lost it. He fired. The shot echoed, deafening in the night. When the smoke cleared, nothing. No bodies, no blood, just an empty clearing, like they'd never been there, except they had, because on the porch, placed neatly in front of the door, was Chelsea's hiking boot. The other one, the one that hadn't been in the box, cleaned, laced up, perfectly placed. We were never in control. We stayed up until sunrise, none of us speaking. When the light came, we did what we always did. We packed, ran, but they'd gotten what they wanted. Because now it wasn't about the woods. It wasn't even about following us home. It was about being a part of us. Every reflection, every unlocked window, every darkened room. We didn't talk about going to the cops anymore. By that point, it was pointless. The thing following us wasn't something you could hand over in a report. There were no fingerprints, no suspects, just presence, just the knowing. And now it was inside. Not physically, not always, but we carried them with us. In the way we checked windows twice, in the way we flinched when the floor creaked, in the way the silence stretched out too long between words. Dan kept saying, "We need to end it." But none of us knew what it was. We weren't being stalked anymore. We were being inhabited, little by little. We tried going back to normal, work, groceries, friends, but it didn't work, because they started getting bolder. Chelsea was the first to break. She sent me a video. No subject line, no text. It was from her phone camera, filming her bedroom window. Outside, in the glow of the street lamp, there was a person standing perfectly still, but it wasn't the same as before. This one was wearing her hoodie, the same REI zip-up she'd lost on that trip, and the way it fit was wrong. Too tight in some places, loose in others, like it was stretching over something that wasn't quite human proportions. No face visible, just the outline, still, watching. When she called me, she was hysterical. He didn't move, for hours. I closed the blinds. When I opened them again, he was gone. But my front door was unlocked. Dan went darker, stopped answering texts. When I finally went to his apartment, I found him sitting in the dark. No TV, no music, just sitting. He didn't even look up when I knocked. "They're inside the walls now," he said. His nails were bitten down to the quick. "Inside the walls." He pointed to the corner of the room. "There's a hollow spot there. I heard it breathing last night. I know they're in there." I sat with him for hours. At some point he dozed off. I should have left, but I stayed. And that's when I heard it. Soft tapping. From inside the wall. Slow, steady. Almost polite. I didn't wake Dan because what was the point? You can't fight an idea. You can't shoot a presence. We left Goat Flats weeks ago. But they never left us. The last time we spoke, Dan said something that stuck with me. You know how you never really notice your own reflection? You look, but you don't see. I think that's how they started, just watching from the other side. But now, he trailed off, they're not reflections anymore. I stopped hearing from him after that. Chelsea too. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't next. Because now it's small things. finding the window cracked open when I know I locked it, waking up to see my shoes lined up perfectly by the door, shoes I didn't wear that day, hearing soft, deliberate tapping from under my bed. Every time I pass a mirror, I don't look directly anymore, because sometimes for a split second, I can feel it. A breath. Not mine. Not anymore. I haven't gone back to Goat Flats. I don't need to, because I understand now. It was never about the place. It was about permission. When we stayed the night, when we let them get close, we invited them in. And they're so patient, so polite. They knock, they wait. And when you ignore them long enough, they come inside anyway. So if you're reading this, if you ever go camping, and you see someone standing too still in the woods, too far away, if you hear them knock, not loud, but deliberate, don't look back, because it's not curiosity that kills you, it's the recognition. And once you recognize them, they recognize you too, forever.